Deplorable Nerfer says, what happens when the last Bitcoin is mined? Do the miners continue and rely on fees to maintain the network? Yes, it's exactly what happens. So when in 2134, I think it is 110 years from now. Don't quote me on that. Actually, you can quote me on this because I have the whole thing up here. I'm becoming a YouTube veteran here, slowly. But I kind of got away from this. I think we need to get back to the spreadsheets for a while, because I used to pretty much have a spreadsheet on every show, and I haven't had that for a while. So let's take a quick look at the mining schedule here in layman's terms. All right, let's zoom in a bit. So you can see where we are here. This is always a good one to check up on because it's so crazy to me. So this is where we are right now. We got 3.125 every 10 minutes, 164,000 per year. Over the 4 years, we got 657,000 Bitcoin mined in this epoch and 450 per day. So that's where we are today. And I have this one highlighted here because this one's important. Actually, let's do 2064. Because in 2064, the block rewards every 10 minutes are going to be, what is that? 600,000 sats. 321 per year. So in 2064, there's actually going to be less Bitcoin mined per year than we're mining right now. And the reason why I highlighted 2064 is because I feel like that's going to be within our lifetime. This isn't something that's very far out there that we can't even really fathom. This is going to be probably within a lot of our lifetimes when this happens. So there's going to be less Bitcoin mined per year than there is per day right now within our lifetime. And so that equates to only 1,200 Bitcoin over that epoch and 0.87 of a Bitcoin per day, less than a Bitcoin mined per day for the entire world. $21.36 is when the last Bitcoin is going to be mined. And so when that happens, look at that. It doesn't even register on there for the per day. So that's like 10,000 sats, I think. That's less than 10,000 sats are going to be mined per day in 2136. Wild. So, I mean, moral of the story there is never get too wrapped up in the price movement day to day, week to month, even year to year. Like, always zoom out. But so yes, the question here is, when is the last Bitcoin? When is last Bitcoin is mined, the miners continue and rely on the fees to maintain the network. Yes. So every I'll just bring this up quickly to show the whole story here. So let's look at this block. This was the last block that was mined. Actually, let's do SecPool because screw Foundry. So this is one of the last blocks that was mined. So every time there's a new block that's mined in Bitcoin every 10 minutes on average, they get a subsidy and the fees. So the subsidy there is the 3.125, which we talked about there every 10 minutes. That's the subsidy. So they get that automatically for mining the block, solving the block reward. Sorry, solving the block equation, earning the block reward. Lots of different terms there, but anyways, that's the subsidy. And then the fees there, every time there's a transaction that's picked up. So you can scroll down here, you can see the 5,500 transactions that were a part of that block. That's what I was talking about before. It's just a giant ledger. This is just a bunch of transactions. And so every time there's a transaction that gets picked up, there's a fee attached to it. Every time you want to send Bitcoin on layer 1, you have to pay a fee. And so the sum of all those fees, of all the transactions within that block, that gets paid to the miner as well. So in this case, it was 4 million sats worth $3,000. So very low. This is like an all-time low this year for fees. So the subsidy and the fees get paid to the miner. And in 2136, the subsidy is gone. So they're only fees. And if you think about how crazy that's going to be, but there's probably going to come a point where the fees actually are higher than the subsidy? I think, but it's really hard to know, because once we get to that point, I think that Bitcoin's going to be so valuable that the fees will actually be much lower as well. That's why there's a bunch of people that subscribe to the theory that the fees are going to be like 4,000 sats per VByte. I just don't ever see that, because Bitcoin's going to be, each Satoshi is going to be so valuable that nobody's going to want to pay that. Nobody's going to, it's all supply and demand, even the Bitcoin blockchain, like the market, to get into the next block. And nobody's going to have that. Nobody's going to want to do that. I mean, yeah, countries and big companies will be able to do it, but that's not going to fill the whole blockchain. So I think it's probably going to be some sort of a happy medium between not that expensive, but also expensive enough that nobody's going to be using it. Like, I'm not going to be using the layer 1 in the year 2100. I'm going to be using Lightning or eCash or Liquid, but it's also not going to be so expensive that nobody's going to use it. Does that make sense? So I think it's probably going to be between 4 sats per VByte and probably 40 sats per VByte forever. But the sats are going to increase in value. So it's going to be much more expensive in terms of like your currency to actually use it. So a lot of people think that the fees are going to be like 400 sats per VByte, 4,000 sats per VByte and above going forward. I just don't see that. I really don't.